Justin Trudeau is the darling of the left and a champion of progressive elites everywhere. This was painfully evident when he delivered an Oscar-worthy performance during his first address to the United Nations General Assembly in New York. With flair and pizzazz, Trudeau warned against the rise of nationalism and anti-globalization sentiments in the West, and he urged fellow world leaders to confront fear by championing his own pet issues of immigration, refugees, and diversity.
And when leaders are faced with citizens' anxiety, we have a choice to make. Do we exploit that anxiety, or do we allay it? Because we believe we should confront anxiety with a clear plan to deal with its root causes. Because what is the alternative? To exploit anxiety? To turn it into fear and blame? To reject others because they look or speak or pray differently than we do? In Canada, we see diversity as a source of strength, not weakness. Our country is strong not in spite of our differences, but because of them.
This, in a nutshell, is everything wrong with Justin Trudeau and his naive worldview. Trudeau uses his platform on the world stage not to condemn violence, terrorism, war crimes, or crimes against humanity. Trudeau didn't talk about the plight of Christians in the Middle East, the genocide against Yazidis and other religious minorities at the hands of the Islamic State, or of Russia's illegal military intervention into Ukraine. Trudeau didn't raise concerns over the Islamic terrorist group Boko Haram, its violent insurgency in Nigeria, or the status of the 276 missing female students who were kidnapped from their school in 2014. Trudeau made no mention of the ongoing civil wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Pakistan, Yemen, or Libya, or of the role of state sponsors of terrorism, such as Iran and Saudi Arabia, and the role they play in fueling these conflicts and spreading a violent and dangerous ideology. Trudeau failed to mention the tens of thousands killed in these wars in 2016, or discuss the millions of people affected by armed conflicts, terrorism, tyrannical governments, and abusive regimes around the world, many of whom had representatives in the room in attendance for Trudeau's speech. It was a missed opportunity. Instead, Trudeau spent his moment in the spotlight blathering about multiculturalism, while not so subtly condemning his political opponents and taking a swipe at conservatives everywhere. You see, in Trudeau's mind, Islamic terrorism and unchecked immigration are not the problem, and they're not anywhere nearly as troubling as the fact that people want to talk about terrorism and unchecked immigration. Somehow, discussing the solutions to these very real problems has become akin to, in Trudeau's words, stoking public anxiety. Ironically, Trudeau delivered his remarks from an armed fortress of security, the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Just days earlier, a radicalized Muslim migrant from Afghanistan planted improvised explosive devices in several locations across New York and New Jersey. 3 of these bombs detonated, one in the popular Manhattan neighborhood of Chelsea on a Saturday night, injuring 29 people. Now, in response to this terrorism, New York City was on virtual lockdown. On top of the exceedingly heightened security that always comes alongside the United Nations General Assembly, the police presence in New York was amplified even further. New York's own governor noted that it was, quote, probably the largest security presence ever amassed, unquote. Ever. Now, I was there. I was in Midtown Manhattan, and I saw the city transformed into a practical police state. There were policemen and women on every corner, heavily armed officers patrolling the city, and large caravans of SUVs blocking entire streets. Civilians couldn't get anywhere near the United Nations. So there stood Trudeau, behind a wall of security, lecturing the rest of us and telling us that we shouldn't worry about terrorism, violence, and unchecked immigration. Rather than condemning the terrorists and the jihadists, the ones who are actually spreading the fear and anxiety that Trudeau identifies in his speech, Trudeau scolded those who react to the terrorism, those who want to protect citizens, and those who want to proactively stop jihadist violence. Rather than being a champion of peace and stability on the world stage, Trudeau simply doubled down on his own narrow political agenda. Trudeau's message may be well received by those elites inside the United Nations bubble, but to those of us on the outside, those without police escorts and armed security guards to protect us everywhere we go? Well, Trudeau demonstrated just how naive and out of touch he is when it comes to the valid security concerns held by everyday citizens.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.